Hello, everybody. My name is Clantis, and welcome to my podcast episode 2. So, I'm kind of like figuring out this whole podcast thing, and I'm not quite sure if it first becomes a video before I can also turn it into a podcast. I'm not quite sure there yet. I'm still trying to find more information, but work has been keeping me very, very busy for me to be doing some research on this one. But let's work with what we've got, because as time goes, I will have figured it out how this whole podcast thing works. And I am very intrigued and interested because I've always wanted to start a podcast, as I said earlier or in my previous video. But anyways, so I realized that I don't want to turn this podcast into like how I do my typical videos, especially my true crime YouTube videos and the videos that I also post on my main channel. So I thought maybe this one is just going to be more like a commentary type of situation rather than a thoroughly researched topic. It's just me speaking my mind. And right now, what's on my mind is the whole Thabo Bester saga that just keeps developing, and every time it develops, it takes us on a very high roller coaster ride, and we find ourselves with our jaws on the floor after taking that ride, and names are getting revealed. There's so many that is going on, which I would like to talk about in this video, in this podcast today. So, where did this all start? So, as I have indicated, I think in my previous podcast, episode 1, that there's a big story that is developing in South Africa. At the time when I did that podcast video, the fugitives were still on the run. So who am I talking about? I'm talking about Thabo Bester. Now, for the purposes of not getting struck by YouTube, there are some words that I will not be able to pronounce as they are. You'll just have to use your imagination. But it is some kind of an attack on women. When a man forces himself on women, you know what that is called. But I'm just going to use a different terminology that I also learned from a fellow content creator by the name of Lelo Ndlovu. She also runs a podcast, and she's very much invested in this story. And so she's also inspired me to kind of like obsess over the story, because I am obsessed about true crime. I am obsessed about the people's brains, what goes on in there, what makes you do what you do, that type of thing. So I'm going to be using the word Arapist. So Thabo Bester is known as Facebook Arapist, and he was using Facebook to lure women who had inspiration or aspirations of becoming models. And so he posed as a model scout, and he will promise these girls that he would take them internationally and become like supermodels next to Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell and things like that. But of course, every girl that he interacted with, they had no reason why they should not trust him. Unfortunately for them, once he has established some kind of trust between him and them, he will then invite them to a location of some sort, and then to do a photo shoot, I suppose, for their portfolio or something like that. And so while these girls would probably be busy changing in the change room to get into the outfits that they are going to be taking the photos with, that's when Thabo Bester will go into their persons and steal their cell phones. If they have laptops, he will also steal their laptops. And by the time the girls come out of the change room, he's long gone. So he was doing that as because he says that he doesn't have any formal education, and of course nobody's going to hire him. But other than that, it's a life of crime that he started at a very young age. Perhaps we need to go back in order for us to, which I always felt that it's an excuse or why a person does what they do because of their background. I had a very, very rough childhood, but you would never see me hurt another human being just so I can survive. That's just a lame excuse and a demonstration of laziness and also just not taking responsibility and accountability for yourself. So when he was born, apparently he was born out of therapists. His mother was therapist by somebody in the community who was a shop owner. And when she gave birth to Thabo, about a year later, she took Thabo to her own mother, which is Thabo's grandparents, and just basically dumped him there, and she disappeared. And the first time she would see her son, it would be on television when he was being sentenced to life imprisonment because one of the models that he lured on Facebook, he actually ended up murdering her. And so he was sentenced to life imprisonment for that. That was the first time his own mother saw him for the first time since she left him with her mother when Thabo was 1 year old or something like that. Crazy already, this story starts very crazily. So everybody has been asking questions, is Thabo Bester even his real name? Turns out yes, it is his real name. The Bester surname, it is his grandfather's surname, and Thabo was of course given to him by his mother. So it's just a crazy stuff. And then so when he was a little boy, he was a little kleptomaniac. He was stealing from people. At one point, his grandfather caught him with a jar filled with coins. When he asked him where he got the money from, he said the neighbor gave it to him. So the grandfather took him by the hand together with a jar of money to the neighbor and then knocked on the door and said, "Hey, did you give Thabo this jar filled with money?" And the neighbor's like, "No, I was not even aware that the jar was missing." And so that's how it all started. And so ever since Thabo was growing as a young boy, he was just stealing. At 17, he was even sentenced to jail for stealing. And as he was growing older, his modus operandi of stealing from people just escalated to now sophisticated way of getting what he wanted to what now we know as a Facebook therapist. So after luring these girls, some of them he would even take them to like Airbnbs, and then if he liked the girl, while she's busy changing, he will then attack her, force himself on them, and then he would steal their stuff, and then he would go. Apparently there was even one girl that actually fought him back, and she really put up a fight, even though unfortunately she ended up getting therapist by Thabo. But she did put up a very big fight, scratched him, did everything that she could, that if anything happened, especially with forensic investigation, they'll be able to abstract his DNA from her nails and things like that. But he managed to escape. So that's how he became the Facebook therapist. Unfortunately, with the girl that he ended up killing, that girl ended up being his girlfriend, and then he was taking her to Cape Town, and in Cape Town, this is where this incident happened, and then he was arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced to life. And then the police were already searching for him for the two therapists that they knew of, and so he was arrested, prosecuted, and then he was sentenced to 75 years in prison for the two therapist cases. And so this is 2011. And then he's finally sentenced to everything in 2012. And then life kind of like, we all forgot about him. We went on with our lives as a nation. And it's only about 10 years later or so, he's resurfaced. When he resurfaced, we as a nation are told that Thabo Bester on the 3rd of May 2022, he was burnt beyond recognition in a fire that started in his cell in the Mangaung maximum prison. So now some of us were like, okay, but I don't think people necessarily care when a person is behind bars, especially when they've taken a life and then they also tortured women. So to many of us, that's, oh wow, justice is finally served. You know, natural justice, I always believe in natural justice. If our man-made justice system fails us. So I felt, oh, great. Yeah, he's a dog anyway. Okay, not that. Okay, yeah, let's leave it there. And so that was it. That life went on up until when the news broke on the 17th or 16th of March that Thabo Bester is actually on the loose. The burnt body in his cell, that was not him. And how do we know that it was not him? Apparently, when the news broke back in 2022 that Thabo Bester was found burnt beyond recognition in his cell, his mother, the one that he has not seen throughout his life, went to the prison to go claim his body. But before she went to claim his body, the girlfriend, whom now we know is his accomplice, she's a medical doctor, she also is a businesswoman, owns a very successful practice, and she's also a celebrity doctor, like an Instagram doctor, if I may put it that way. And she has like A-lister clients, like A-lister celebrity clients here in South Africa. That's how big this woman is. And she also created herself a fan base with some young girls that aspire to be like her. And so it turns out that this woman has been visiting Thabo Bester since 2016. All the way since 2016, and she's married. She's married to another doctor. I'm not going to mention his name, but his surname is Makutumana, which Dr. Makutumana, this lady, calls herself. And when Thabo Bester had died in his cell, this Dr. Makutumana, the woman, Nandipa Makutumana, she went and claimed the body. But unfortunately, there was some kind of technical issues. The prison could not basically hand the body over to her because they were not quite sure of her status, like what is her relation with the body. Then she came with a trick and said, no, I am married to the deceased in customary marriage. Now, in South Africa, we have customary marriage. Customary marriage is a marriage between, it's like a traditional wedding. Let me put it that way. Me as a Zulu person, we have our own marriage system. It's not like the Western system. If you want to include the Western system, you can go ahead and include the Western system of marriage. But we have what we call a customary marriage, where two families meet after I go pay lobola, which is dowry, to the woman that I'm interested in marrying, and then some rituals take place, and then we are married. That's the simplest way I can explain this. So she went and said, no, we are married in customarily, so I'm his wife. But the prison was still like, we're not quite sure. So then that's when she went and looked for Thabo Bester's mother and said, because you are his mother, please go claim the body. Now, what the good doctor did not count on is the fact that the prison will first have to confirm that indeed this is Thabo Bester's mother, the deceased. And so they abstracted some DNA samples out of her. And then when they tested the DNA against that of the charred body, the DNA did not match. So this is now where the story begins. Like, if the DNA does not match, is either Thabo Bester's mother is not his biological mother, or she's just lying. Which one is it? So unfortunately, they did not release the body to the mother, neither to Dr. Nandipa Makutumana. So Dr. Makutumana then approached the court, basically to fight for her right to bury her husband, since he is her customary marriage husband, things like that. But the body was still not released. I think it eventually was released into her custody. And guess what she did? Instead of burying the body, she went and cremated the body. So when you cremate the body, of course, evidence is gone. So she was quite clever on that one, like, this body must not be linked to me at all. So when she got the order to take the body, she went straight to the crematorium and had the body cremated. Now, we wake up on the 17th or the 16th, I can't remember, of March. Thabo Bester is actually alive. The body was not his, And turns out that Investigations had already started back in 2022, but the Department of Correctional Services was just messing things up together with the South African Police Services, not doing thorough investigations. So there's a process in South African prisons that when a prisoner dies, there's a process that begins, like a legal process that will begin. For example, an inquest is going to be opened. Basically, this is an investigation to check what caused the death of the prisoner, especially if the death was unnatural or an accident or things like that. They want to get to the bottom of this whole thing. They will investigate the crime or the scene, not the crime scene, the scene as to what sparked the fire. And why was he found under the mattress? Did he commit the S word? Or was he killed by someone else and somebody tried to cover this up and things like that? So that investigation or inquest basically would have dug and found all those facts. But no, that did not happen, because after the fire had actually died down, the prison wardens, who happens to be the G4 security guards that guard the prison, called a prisoner and said, hey, can you clean up this mess? There's an accident that happened here. Basically, the scene. Let's call it the crime scene, because now we know that it was not Thabo Bester. Who was that person? And so the person cleaned the all the stuff in there, removing the burnt mattress, and cleaned where the body was and things like that, basically tampering with evidence. Now, the interesting part as well, when the autopsy report came, it said that body was not Thabo Bester. That we already established, because the mother's DNA did not match the body. Secondly, there was no sign of inhalation of smoke in this person's lungs, meaning that body, when they were placed there under the mattress, they were already dead. And now the pathologist then checked what was the cause of death, and then they discovered that he had blunt force trauma on his head, meaning that he was killed in that manner. And so it's impossible that would have been Thabo Bester. And if it was Thabo Bester, how would he have committed a blunt force trauma to himself? And after basically killing himself through that method, how then did he lift a mattress, went underneath it, and how did he burn himself? Did he go underneath the mattress and lit up the mattress, or he first lit up the mattress, ran under the mattress? It's just a mess. This whole explanation is a mess, and it proves that it's a mess because today, which is the 13th of April 2023, everybody was called to Parliament. The Correctional Services was called to Parliament. The South African Police Service was called to Parliament. The G4 security company that was guarding the prison was also called to Parliament to answer these questions. But I'll get to that a little bit later. So then the crazy part is when the story broke on the 17th. This is when Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipa Makudumana, who is his girlfriend and accomplice. By the way, this doctor has 2 daughters. They are not Thabo Bester's children. This is that other doctor that Dr. Makudumana is married to. And this murderer, rapist, was living under the same roof with those 2 little girls. The carelessness of Dr. Makudumana it's incomprehensible for me. But other than that, the case that, so after this whole story broke, that's when they basically started running away. They were on the loose, basically. They were at large, if you want to put it that way. And so South Africans, we were all like, what? What are you talking about? And at first it sounded funny. For some of us, we were like, damn, that's creative. For me, I feel like that is the most creative way of escaping from prison, through fake death. But then again, in order for you to stage something like that, there's got to be people behind it. From the wardens, everybody in that prison. somebody big, somebody that holds a very important position must have known about this. Outside of the prison, like in the correctional services department, in the police department, you name it, everywhere these guys have been, somebody knew and somebody was protecting the corridor that they have opened for these two fugitives. Because let me tell you what I mean. So these two disappeared, and investigations ensued, and then they were sought after. From the 1st of April, they were sought after, and the police were looking everywhere. They were trying to find any lead that will tell them where these two had run to. Now, South Africans at this point in time have lost faith in the police minister, or in the police system, or the criminal justice system, let me put it that way. South Africans have lost faith in that. And the minister, both the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services and the Minister of Police were just blabbing around. Just blabbing, and we, to this day, I can't tell you what those two were saying to us. But all we were hearing was, oh, we are embarrassed. Of course you must be embarrassed. You have to be embarrassed. And once you are embarrassed, why aren't you resigning in shame? But this is South Africa again. So, to cut a long story, Dr. Makutumana's father was then called, and he was asked about the whereabouts of his daughter. He said that he knew where she was, but he's not going to give location. Now, in my mind, I'm like, isn't that a crime? Like concealing something about a person that may have broken the law. But anyways, nothing happened to him. But around the 28th or 27th, a group of South African Police Service, together with the forensic team, went to Dr. Makutumana and Thabo Bester's house in Hyde Park, where they started digging the grounds of that mansion they were staying at. And nobody knows what they were doing there, but apparently there are whispers that there may be bodies that are buried on that ground. And two of Dr. Makutumana's employees also have gone missing. So some people think maybe the bodies that were, we're not sure if they were found or bodies were found. Nobody knows that. But apparently that is what the forensics were looking for, because they were in full gear, forensic gear. And we still don't know as a nation what they found. But it's understandable as well that they need to keep some investigative information to themselves until the information is revealed, perhaps in court or something like that, when they're on trial. So from there, then we learned that Dr. Makutumana's Mercedes-Benz was found on the Zimbabwean side of the Beitbridge border, just abandoned there. And we were all wondering, a whole 1.2 million rand Mercedes-Benz just abandoned in another country, and it also had a false number plate, plate number. Again, we don't know what this was all about. And she was still in South Africa at that time, and investigations were taking place, but she was not aware of some investigations taking place, because some detectives did go up to her and approached her about this matter, and she said she was going to settle the difference of what she was owing to that Mercedes-Benz, and she did not give any explanation as to why her Mercedes-Benz was in Zimbabwe. Now we get to find out what exactly she was doing. I think it was a decoy of some sort, like at some airports in the world, in order to pass to smuggle drugs, you first, the mules will have to be caught, and then all the police resources will be around the mule while the big confinement is going through the country in the background. I think that's what they were also doing, because now we know that these two fugitives, when they left South Africa, they went to Zimbabwe. From Zimbabwe, they entered Zambia. From Zambia, they entered into Malawi into Tanzania. Now, When they were caught with several passports, and none of these passports had any entry stamp. Like a stamp entering Zimbabwe, and a stamp entering Zambia, a stamp entering Malawi, and a stamp entering Tanzania. These passports were empty and they had different identities. Clearly, they were stealing or they got somebody in the Home Affairs. That's why I'm saying outside of Mangaung Maximum Prison, there are other big people played a role in this. Who gave them these passports? Who gave Thabo Bester a new ID? There's a new ID that he had. I can't remember what he was calling himself. Tsakane or something like that. Ngwane or something of that nature. And then the passport that Thabo Bester was moving around with was some Thomas Kelly or something like that. And Dr. Makutumana was using another doctor that she is associated with, or maybe a doctor that she knew. How did she get her passport? No one knows, but I suspect she stole the passport. Maybe they met somewhere in some restaurant and then she said something to the doctor like, hey, you have something, go to the bathroom and check it out. While that doctor went to the bathroom, Dr. Makutumane went into this lady's purse, found the passport, hid it, and then pretended as if everything is now fine with her face. We don't know. I'm just speculating here. But they were arrested on Friday. What was Friday again? Yeah, they were arrested last week, Friday, in Tanzania, 10 kilometers before the Kenyan border. And again, who are the people that opened that corridor for them? Who opened the corridor for them to enter Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, and Kenya? And then I said in my other video that I don't believe that they were headed to the US, as some people speculating. I think they were headed to Nigeria. And the reason why I'm saying they were going to Nigeria is because Nigeria is the most populous country on the African continent, and it would be very difficult to find them. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. And I think as well the Nigerian criminal justice system as well is easily corruptible. So they were going to live a very comfortable life, even though they were also starting to run out of cash as they were on the run. So they were brought back to South Africa today, the 13th of April 2023, around the wee hours of the morning of 3 o'clock. Thabo Bester was taken to Jose Mamburu Maximum Prison in Pretoria. That is where he is right now. And Dr. Nandipa Makutumana was then shipped straight to Bloemfontein, where she appeared for the first time at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where she was charged with fraud. She was charged with violating bodies. She was charged with defeating the ends of justice. And she was also charged with aiding and abetting an escape of a prisoner. And I think they're also going to add murder charges. Remember that dead body and another dead body that was floating in some river in Bloemfontein that was claimed by herself. No one knows if she killed that person or whatever the case was. So as things stand right now, Dr. Nandipa Makutumana's brother came out and said, hey, he's the one who blew the lid out of this whole thing. And he's also, I think, will be a person of interest, even though he said that he was going to cooperate with the law. If the state wants him to testify, he's more than willing to testify. A security guard from G-Force was also arrested together with Dr. Nandipa's father, and they were charged with murder. They appeared in court, I think, yesterday. And more arrests apparently were effected today, and more arrests are going to be effected. Now, South Africans are interested to know who are the people that were behind all of this escape, and whose body was that was found in that cell. So all of that is going to be very interesting to find out. And I'm also interested or intrigued as to where they were going from Kenya. In fact, where was their final destination? Where did they thought they were going to live happily ever after? That much I'm very much interested to know. So guys, I'm going to leave this here, and definitely in my next episode we will continue on this story, because it is a big story here in South Africa. And my camera is flashing and it's saying